I have been sick for a week, which means I've had nothing but time to think and capacity to do almost nothing else. So I thought I'd make a video today and share some of my thoughts, because this dilemma that I've had personally in the last week due to having this annoying cold is extremely relevant to lots of issues in everyday life. So let's try anyway and see if my voice holds out. And yeah, that's gonna be today. Hi everyone, Paul Micallef here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, usually with a voice that is a little bit more warmed up than right now. And I usually have some lights and I can usually fully open my eyes too. But that's where we're at today. I am going to share something that I think probably a lot of you can relate to, which is the conundrum of what to do, how to cope when you don't have capacity. It's something that shows up in big ways and little ways from time to time. And this week I've had a full load of it. Is that a sentence? It is today. So trying to figure out, do I rest? Do I push through? What can I do? I don't know, all of these questions. So we'll be exploring that today. So if you're anything like me, you like to be productive, or at the very least creative, or at the very least following some kind of passion or interest, or just doing something fun that seems somewhat meaningful or is at least a little bit enjoyable. That's me most of the time. I usually get excited about ideas a lot, and I really like thinking things through and creating stuff with my brain that often brains quite well in other circumstances. And this week, I've been completely unable to do any of that. All the things that I typically like to do, that I find meaning in doing, like making videos and writing my book and educating myself and communicating with other people and working with ideas and all of that kind of stuff, even doing fun puzzles that I do for leisure, or even watching TV or YouTube or listening to an audiobook, that all requires my brain to be somewhat able to process information and understand what's going on and focus. And in my current state, that is almost impossible. I can do it very briefly for a little bit, and then I get a massive headache, and my body just forces me to stop. Like, you tried reading, please stop now. You tried listening to an audiobook, please stop now. You tried making some progress on your book, please stop now. So the big question when a person is temporarily incapacitated is, well, what do I do right now? Because there are a couple of different strategies, right? And let me know in the comments what you do when you don't have capacity. Strategy number one, just keep pushing through. Try and do everything possible to keep going, right? That's one strategy. On the other side, another strategy is, I'm not functioning right now. I need a break. I need a rest. I need to listen to my body to build up those resources again. So option number two is to stop trying to do anything and just take a break. I'm essentially going to wait until I feel better before doing anything more. I'm going to not try until I have more energy to try. And I guess there is always a third option. I don't like binary things. So somewhere between both of those is finding a way to do something rather than nothing. Is it possible to do something with the energy that I have at an appropriate level, rather than assuming that I am completely incapacitated? I can say, well, I can't do this. Maybe I can do half of that, or maybe I can do a quarter of that, or maybe I can do a tenth of that. Am I too sick to go for a 10-minute walk? Maybe it would be good for me to leave the house for 5 minutes and come back. Can I run some errands? Can I go buy myself some food from the shops? Would that be a good idea? Can I do other little things, or should I do absolutely nothing? Now, I don't know about you, but the strategy that I'm tempted to use, especially when it's so frustrating not being able to do what I want to do, is to stop everything and say, I am going to prioritize my brain and my body and my rest, and I'm going to get healthy again. And then when I'm healthy again, then I'm going to go back and engage in life again. But until that time, I'm basically going to check out. And I can imagine that for a lot of people, that might actually work. Except it kind of has a key assumption that is 100% necessary for that strategy to work. And the assumption is that I will get better. The assumption is that there will be a time in the near future where I feel good again. And that's one of the reasons it's personally a lot easier to take a break when I have a physical illness, because I know, just statistically, I'll have a cold for a couple of days, maybe a week. And then I know just from past experience that I'll probably feel better after that. But what about the situation where I don't feel good again? What about the situation where it's more like a chronic illness that needs to be managed rather than cured? If being sick and having very low capacity is not just a thing that happens on every once in a while on an off day, and then the rest of the time it's fine, if it's actually quite common to be in that situation, then the push through strategy is out the window, and the just rest until I feel better strategy is also out the window. I'm forced by the reality of my situation to try and find a way to be a bit linear about this. And if I have a bit more energy and capacity, then I do a little bit more. And if I have less, then I do a little bit less. And as with all non-binary solutions, that third option is much, much more difficult, because I have to rely on a much higher level of self-awareness. Not only self-awareness of how do I feel right now, how much energy do I have right now, but also sort of predictive self-awareness. Okay, I feel crap right now. If I went for a walk, would I feel better? If I had a phone call, would I feel better? If I went back to bed, would I feel better? And the answer a lot of the time is, I don't know. I can't think straight. I can't think at all. How am I supposed to do the work of figuring out what I need to feel better? Unfortunately, though, if I don't do that at all, I end up doing nothing and not getting out of the house, not giving myself any stimulus at all. And that feels really depressing, because there's just no stimulation there, which is okay for a little bit. But if it goes on and on and on, then suddenly it's probably a good idea that I call a friend and say, hey, can you help me leave the house? That would be really helpful. And so paradoxically, not needing to do anything sometimes actually makes the situation worse. There came a point where I had to go get food. I'd been improvising with what I could find in the cupboard for days. Now I have to actually leave the house and go shopping. Some of you might say, well, why not get food ordered or call a friend or something like that? But for me personally, calling someone or figuring out how to communicate that or opening an app would have been twice as hard. So it sounds like an ordeal, but the easiest thing for me to do was to get out of the house and drive myself to the supermarket. And weirdly, because I had to do that, my body was forced to put itself into gear, and I had a little bit more energy again for some reason. I could get up and do the thing, and when I got home, I felt a little bit better. And then later on, I was more tired, which allowed me to sleep better. And so weirdly, being forced to do certain things seemed to actually help in a weird way. I find that life in general is extremely specialized these days, as in the amount of tasks that we are actually required to do for ourselves is pretty minimal. And almost all the productive tasks that I can do involve looking at a screen on my phone. Even something as basic as cooking. I don't cook. I basically just reheat pre-prepared food. A couple of years ago, I was visiting a friend in Kenya, and we spent an hour in the kitchen helping to prepare dinner. And it was basically just, I was shelling peas for an hour because that was the most helpful thing that I had the skill to do at the time. There was not much else that I could do to help. You just don't do that in Australia. I think of cooking with peas as getting pre-shelled frozen peas and like putting them in a saucepan, and I think that's cooking. Actually, we've cut out most of the process. I don't need to grow them or harvest them or shell them or prepare them at all. It's just open in the pan, that's it. And that's what I call cooking. So in some ways, it kind of makes sense that when the limits of my brain stop functioning in the way that I previously expect them to, it limits almost everything that I can do, because everything that I can do requires a reasonable amount of executive function. And a lot of the time, I just wish there was something productive, useful, even just distracting to occupy my time and my brain that I was able to do with a reduced ability to concentrate and open my eyes and think through things. So I guess after a full week of reflecting on this, because I can't really do very much else, what I've come to, the point where I've reached with this whole thing, is two things. The first one is just acceptance. Sometimes acceptance is the only option. You can fight against reality all you like. Eventually reality wins. Who was it that said reality is is an illusion, but it's a very persistent illusion. So I can try and wish my situation away as much as possible, but I still am left with this voice and a cough, and wishing that I could focus on something and think it through and do something meaningful and productive. And sometimes I just can't for weeks, something like that at a time. The second part after that acceptance is to re-engage with life, for lack of a better word. Like the previous strategy of I'll just rest until I feel better, if that's not working, then I need to re-engage with life even though I still feel terrible. And at first, when I try and do that, the alarm bells go off saying, no, if you do this, you'll be sick for longer. If you push yourself, if you do anything, you really need to do nothing. Go straight back to bed. Like, don't even do anything. And that's the quickest way to get healthy again, so that you can come back and have your brain be online again. And so it's actually really hard to re-engage with life, even just a little bit, because I'm so scared that if I do that, then I'm sabotaging my recovery somehow. Whereas if I've accepted that this is just life, I'm going to have good days and bad days, and I might not necessarily be healthy again, then weirdly, it actually helps to energize me because I'm more likely to try things. I'm more likely to ask for help getting out of the house. I'm more likely to push myself to do little things that aren't that important, like going for a walk. Or the other day, I actually went to a family event. I thought, I've been at home doing absolutely nothing for so many days. It will probably do me good to get out of the house. And at the very least, it was a distraction. It forced me to pay attention a little bit, even though it wasn't that important. I could take a break whenever I wanted. I could go home whenever I wanted. And that's basically how I convinced myself that it was a good idea to go. I said, let's just go. You can go home anytime. You can be there for 5 minutes and say, nah, this was a bad idea. I'm going home. Right. So there's no downside to going. Just go, see how you go. It'll probably be good for you. And it's hard to describe the fear that comes along with that. The fear of, if I do too much, I'm going to stay in this miserable state for a lot longer. Okay, so I think doing this video was a good idea. Maybe you can guess that I tricked myself using a similar mantra, similar idea, that just try. Worst case scenario, you talk to the camera for 3 minutes and turn it off and say, okay, that was a dumb idea. So this is probably, it seems at the moment in my foggy brain state that I can probably turn this into a video. So hopefully it's worked. I'm curious to hear what you think. Was it worth me trying to push through all of this? I'm really curious to hear if it related to you as well. That's one of the reasons that it's so hard to do videos or to write anything or any kind of intellectual work when I'm like this, because one of the first things that goes is my ability to figure out if someone else is likely to relate or be able to understand what I'm saying. So I will find that out later, I think. Okay, definitely. I feel like I'm hitting a wall now, like an even bigger wall. So I should probably wrap up there. Thanks for watching. I hope this worked, and I will see you again next week.